perfect. All righty. So moving on here, just a quick overview. We're gonna start off with a quick introduction for our panel. Oops, sorry. A quick introduction of our panel members. We'll have shortly after that, we'll have facilitator questions for the panelists, panelist closing remarks, and then audience Q&A. And I think that's when the Zoom participants can ask their questions as well. And then we'll be closing. We'll get out of here no later than 1:30. Sound good? All right. So, all right, moving on here. So we have one panelist, who I think might be stuck in traffic, Rajneesh. So if he comes in, we'll maybe stop and let him give his introduction. But we're going to give each panelist approximately 1 minute for their introduction. So is it okay to start with Andrea Thomas? Okay, Andrea, let's hear your introduction. Probably bring the mic over, right?
Okay, is that better? Hi, it's nice to meet you all. My name is Andrea Thomas. I have a bachelor's degree from Solano. Hi, it's nice to meet you all. My name is Andrea Thomas. I have a bachelor's degree from Solano Community College in biomanufacturing. I work for BioMarin in purification, and I'm also their manufacturing and engagement team lead. In addition, I serve as the commuter conference chair for the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering. And I also serve on the board here for biotechnology.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause for yeah. Sorry, Smarai, are these microphones up there? Do they need to bring, so I don't need to cause feedback and disruptions? Okay, sorry about that. So thank you, Ms. Andrea Thomas. Let's move on to Myra Pastore.
So thank you for the invitation. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. I'm gonna move forward a little bit. So my name is Myra Pastore. I am currently a medical science liaison with AstraZeneca. I am an alumni from Contra Costa College, so I started off my training here.
Nice.
My undergrad was in biochemistry at San Francisco State. And I decided to continue my studies after my undergrad. So I do have a PhD in endocrinology. I ended up doing that in Wisconsin, came back to UCSF, trying to figure out what was I gonna do with my career. A lot of science background, a lot of clinical background, and it's a mixture that I ended up just totally falling in love with, especially with the current role that I have right now. So I'm really happy to be here with you guys. So if you have any questions as we go along, please do not hesitate to ask them. That's one of the things that I do want to let you know. Always asking questions, always exploring is the best way to know, to find out where you want to go as you move along with your own studies.
All right, thank you. All right, next, let's move on to Drew Hendrickson.
Hi, I'm Drew. I work with biotech startup Bloom Bio. We're a bioremediation company tackling industry's toughest pollutants and contaminants. I work as the head of organism discovery and assay development. I have my bachelor's from UC Berkeley in chemical biology and microbial biology. But I actually took a stats class here at Contra Costa College, so I could be a microbiologist today. So I was glad to come by. After graduating, I started working at the Berkeley National Lab, studying the Manhattan Project groundwater and the microbiome around there. And so I'm here today to talk about the cool stuff we can do in biotech and for the environment.
Thank you. Let's give one more round of applause for our panelists. All right, so we got a couple Contra Costa alum. That's great. Let's move on here. So, facilitator, questions for panelists. So, thanks for the introductions. We'll move on to the questions we prepared for you. So let's start with Myra, are you okay with taking this question?
Sure.
It's okay. So this one's for Myra. Why did you decide to work in the field of biotechnology?
Oh my goodness. So I have been working in the lab, literally in the lab since my last summer before graduating from high school. And a lot of times you kind of come around with, this was an experience, and I was very grateful that I was able to do that. So I ended up working at the USDA down in Albany. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but because that ended up making an impact, whenever I went back home, I talked to my mom about it, and she would even hear that excitement of what I was doing in the lab. And so it was pulling that thread that ended up letting me go on and move on to this particular career. One of the things that you find out as you go along is that sometimes you change your mind, and that's essentially it was okay. I ended up moving away from kind of the biology, life science studies to moving into more like a business, a little bit of computer programming. So I was trying out different aspects of it. But at the end of the day, it was that one little thing that really pulled me in, saying that this is what I wanted to do. And I wanted to follow it. I didn't know exactly how I was going to follow it. But I ended up getting in touch with people that ended up guiding me, helping me out to understand what it is like to be in that particular career. And so I really don't have, any regrets as far as moving into pharma. So I do work in pharma. Is very fulfilling. I think that as long as you find in your path and that passion and that you can move forward with it, you'll find that it's not a job that you're doing. It's an actual activity that you enjoy, that every time that you wake up in the morning, it's like, oh, we have a job to do. We have a project to do. We're doing it in a team. We're making an impact, whether it's an impact locally or, hopefully at the end of the day, it impacts, the community throughout the US. You don't know. So, making that effort is super important. So I am very, very happy with the decision of me staying in, tagging along, going along and finding that path that I thought that it was going to be a good fit for me.
Thank you. All right, so running a little bit late, but that's fine. We have Mr. Rajneesh Khanna, right? Mr. Rajneesh, would you like to give maybe a 1 to 2 minute introduction about yourself?
Sure. Sure. Sorry, I've come from Manteca, so got stuck in traffic. Let's try to use it. Okay. But I made it. So yeah, about me. I have a PhD in plant molecular biology from Purdue, and then I did a postdoc at UC Berkeley, and then I decided to try industry. So I joined a company, local company, and we collaborated with Monsanto to develop some soybean transgenic lines. And I had my own lab for 6-7 years and learned a lot from that experience, how food industry works. When I left, I joined Stanford University and do research there part-time. But I decided to start a company because what I discovered was the gap that exists between industry and academia. So biotechnology is a very complex area. It's a privilege to do biotechnology. If you look at countries that don't have enough food to eat, they can't afford to do biotechnology. And you live in an area where there's amazing amount of biotechnology going on, and this college has many great courses to offer. And I also helped with Dr. Krolikowski. We've developed some courses together. So just as a means of introduction, that's who I am. That's background, and I'll be happy to answer the other questions.
Sure, thank you. Let's give a round of applause for Rajneesh. So Rajneesh, we'll give you the same question that we just asked Myra. Why did you decide to work in the field of biotechnology?
That's a good question. I didn't actually think that I was going to work in the field of biotechnology. When I was doing my postdoctorate research, I wanted to go into academia. and just do basic research. But when I went to a company which was kind of just it happened because I was looking for a position and there was one open, and I decided to take it. I learned that there is a great work that can be done in fundamental research. And then in industry, it's really important that fundamental research is done, but it's not appreciated as much because in industry, the company is trying to do research only for application. So when I learned about that, my passion is still basic and fundamental research. So I decided that I was going to try and connect basic research into biotechnology. So when I decided that, then of course I had to work in biotechnology to be able to connect the basic research. So that's how I got into it.
All right, thank you so much. Okay. Let's see here. We got a question for Miss Andrea. Miss Andrea, what is a typical day at work like for you?
I work as a manufacturing associate for BioMarin Pharmaceutical. So typically my day will start with what we call like a shift pass down, or we will have communication between the different shifts, what happened on the previous shift, what's upcoming in the process. Then we'll begin operations for the day. So like I said, I work in purification. So operations might be anything from, making buffers that we need for our process for that day to like homogenization and centrifugation to perhaps performing, column ops. And then during the downtime, I'll utilize that time to work on special projects, communicate with different departments about process improvements, things of that nature. That's essentially what a day in purification at BioMarin is like. They're long days. I work 12-hour shifts, but it's a rewarding opportunity. For me in particular, the mission that we focus on at our company is developing pharmaceuticals and producing pharmaceuticals to treat rare diseases, mainly focused towards children. So that really appeals to me as a parent and makes my job meaningful to know that the work that I put in every day and the operations that I perform every day are making a difference in somebody else's life and making a difference, for those parents and those children. So, that's what a day in the life of a manufacturing associate is like.
Thank you, Andrea. Let's jump back over to Myra, and then we'll got a question for you, Drew. Myra, what is the best and most challenging part of your position?
So when I first started as a medical science liaison, it was a career path that I never actually learned about until the very last few years of my postdoc at UCSF. I only learned about it because a friend of mine became one. And the more she talked about it, the more I'm like, that sounds pretty amazing. One of the things that I wasn't aware of is how much interpersonal skills you need to conduct the business that we do representing a pharmaceutical company. So I am a customer-facing representative for the pharmaceutical company that I'm working with. On my end, I need to understand everything that is related to the product that I'm supporting. So all the clinical trials, or all the patients that were involved in the clinical trial, the results that came out of it, what did the FDA ended up saying about the particular product once it gets approved. So in the back, as a scientist, I understand the physiological component of a disease, the one that this particular product helps with. But at the same time, I need to understand how the customer wants to learn all that information. So do they want to know X, Y, and Z, just the numbers, or do they actually want to discuss it? So the ability to move from a type of personality that I might have to a personality that my customer has is something that as a scientist, we don't really get to do very often. In pharmaceuticals and in biotechnology as a whole, it doesn't really matter what team you're in, you are always going to work in teams. So the ability to not just know what you're responsible for, but also the ability to communicate with people is super important. So I hadn't actually recognized how much of that I was supposed to bring in with me. And I hadn't actually realized that I am more like a people person. One of the things that I had to overcome as a person coming from a different country, English is not my first language, is being comfortable with, saying words that have an accent in them. And it's like, well, okay, I said it, so what? They understood what I said. And so I think that for the longest time, I was actually kind of blocking my own personality from coming out. And it wasn't until I realized, well, they actually listen to me. I can be myself. That idea of being in front of people that are not friends at first, but as you meet them, as you talk to them, as you talk about research, as you talk about collaborations that we can do, it becomes easier. And so it becomes more like a good collaboration. And even those relationships become more like friendships sometimes. And so, those are the things that I wasn't expecting that I was actually going to happen and that I was going to enjoy doing it at the same time. And again, this is outside of just the science. I still need to be a scientist. I still need to understand what the physicians want from us. And so that whole training that comes to that point, it still counts a lot. But the other part of it is you need to be approachable, you need to be friendly, you need to understand how it is that you can communicate better.
Thank you, Myra. Drew, we haven't heard from Drew in a while. What's up, Drew? How you doing down there?
I'm good.
All right. So we got a question for you. What advice would you give to someone to just start out? What advice would you give someone that's just starting out or someone who wants to make their career in biotech at Lawrence Berkeley Lab?
Sure. I'll give like an overview of the things that I did that were kind of helpful, but I think like the overall lesson that I want to leave is to like find your superpower and apply it to everything as a way to sort of like finding a career that something that you really enjoy. So I started researching in a lab as a sophomore. It was really hard to find a lab, but then I just talked to the professor that I liked the most for my classes on plant physiology, and I ended up working in his lab. And it was based on bioremediation. And I remembered how I used to live in Florida and there was that deep water, like deep well horizon oil spill where oil was freaking everywhere. And so I remember like having that memory as sort of that sparking interest to get me drawn to, whatever happened to the oil. Oh, bacteria bloomed. What happened then? They started eating it. How did they do it? By enzymes. By enzymes, we can turn into products that people buy off their shelves. And so now I can kind of connect the dots in retrospect, but through the process, it just kind of looked like, I don't know, enjoying like each failure, each thing that you realize you don't like, and because that kind of brings you to the path that you do really like. So more specifically for getting into Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, my senior year, a professor that I really liked for one of my classes, I started talking to him after class with some questions or things that I thought were exciting or interesting. And after I graduated, I was worried about finding a job, but then I ended up finding a job posting, and then I ended up like having a meeting with him, and then I ended up being hired on and working for 2.5 years with the Berkeley Lab. And I think it was great for the sense that I think working in a lab is a lot of just building up that muscle memory that just comes from doing something like 50 times and it messes up, and then you realize, oh, I kind of mess up when I'm tired, and now I'm going to do these other things so it goes well. Really building that experience over the course of, I'd say, 6 years I've been in the lab has helped me just feel confident in where I'm at now and posing new solutions that could be turned into consumer products and that could have a positive benefit. And it's benefit that I'm glad that I chose, that has connection with. And I think like when you sort of like have your process and just kind of stick through it, I don't know, exciting things happen. So, is there anything else? Oh, some more tangible things. So the Lawrence Berkeley Lab has programs for community college students, such as the Sully program. And so when I was working in the lab, we had community college students come in and intern. And so that was an experience for them to learn all the hands-on work that it takes to be in the lab. And, you know, we often didn't have many like helping hands around the lab. And so I think it was a great opportunity for both of us. And so I think it's great to look out for opportunities like that, especially to make some money too, because it's kind of messed up having to volunteer your work for free for so long until you get the job. Side thing. Yeah. I hope you end up at your careers.
All right, well, thank you, Drew. Hey, Drew. I saw a couple of people maybe trying to jot that down. What's the name of the program for community college students at Lawrence?
SULI, Sully.
Holy. All righty. Thank you so much, Drew. Let's jump back over to Rajneesh. Let's see here. Rajneesh, tell us about your educational and career pathway. What degrees and certifications were you required as you progressed?
I kind of touched upon that in my introduction, but yes, I got a PhD. And you know, my career path when I was choosing it was really to work in academia, not necessarily biotechnology. So I did a PhD. Well, first I did a master's, which was in India before I moved to US in '91. And then I did my PhD and then postdoc. And all these things are required or important if you are going to be a professor in a university. So, I then chose later on to go into biotechnology. So I think in your case, I feel when, young students that I see these days, there are really three types of ways to think about a career in biotechnology. The first one is you're looking for a job and you want to work in a lab and provide support to biotechnology industry and continue to do that. And that's perfectly fine. And for that, it's really good to have some training. And there are courses on campus here that will train you for that. You can get your associates and transfer to a university to get your to graduate, or you can even join a workforce, get enough training to go and get a job. So those opportunities are there. That's the first way of thinking. To move into that path, is a faster and quicker turnaround. The second path, I would say, is someone who's wanting to still kind of exploring, but they want to make it like a bit of a profession. So they want to get a little bit higher degree and go further, right? So then after you transfer, you get your graduation, you look for other PhD or master's programs. And if you go on that track, the advantage of that is you will be able to join industry if you're still interested in industry at a slightly higher level position. However, you should remember the higher level positions, the numbers of higher level positions are much lower than the other positions. So if you really want to work in a company, one opportunity is to do your graduation. So you have your basics covered, unless if you join workforce before that. But after you graduate, you can join industry. There are more jobs in that level, and then you can grow within the company if the company stays long enough, or you're doing well and you have So that's one path. The higher graduation path, that you can still go into company, but after your master's and PhD, but then the number of jobs will be less. The third one is kind of what I chose, and that is one of the most hardest ones. In that particular one, I kind of was listening to Drew. That's where the third one comes in, where you find a passion, you find a problem you want to solve, right? And now if you figure out, okay, I think this is what really interests me and I want to solve this problem, then you gather up everything else you need. So see, one is where you are just working and doing your degrees and following a path and see where you end up. The other one is, okay, I want to solve this problem. What do I need to do that? How do I do that? You still may need some degrees, but now you already have a passion, and that allows you to short circuit or shortcut many things, because let's say in Drew's case, he was interested in environmental issues. So he sought out professors or he went to labs rotations where that kind of work was being done. And the professor would clearly see his passion. So then he was able to work in that lab. And then that goes. So, I'm giving you these three ways of thinking. So, and it's not easy to come up with a passion. It's not like, hey, I think I want to do this. It kind of develops slowly. So I hope that will help.
Thank you, Rajneesh. So let's jump over to Miss Andrea. Andrea, if you could do anything over on your journey, what would it be?
This was a hard one to answer. I took a while thinking about it, and actually think the best answer would have been to quit my job sooner. I used to work as an office manager, and I was really good at my job. I made really good money, provided well, for my family, but it was a job that just essentially made money, for other people. It didn't really have any kind of meaning. It didn't give back to the community or the world really in any way. And it just ultimately wasn't fulfilling to me. If you think about the time that you spend at work every day and the time that you spend away from your family, it's important to love what you do. It's important for it to have meaning to you and to not regret, that time, that you're dedicating in your life. So if I could go back, I would have quit my job sooner and pursued my true interests and passions sooner. That's the best answer that I can give.
Thank you. So we're going to jump over to Ms. Myra. Myra, what was something that surprised you about your journey to becoming a medical science liaison, MSL?
The number of people that were willing to help. I think that, and whenever, I felt like there was something missing still in what I was trying to do. Obviously, I have my friends that I could go and talk to about it. I couldn't really talk to my parents. They're not scientists. We're definitely in a different country. So the ways of doing things here is different from what they're used to. But then also just reaching out to faculty, reaching out to, the faculty that have connections in other institutions, and putting me in contact with other people. When I finally decided, I want to do a PhD, I had no idea what a PhD was. I only knew that, at the end of it, somebody's going to call you doctor because now you have a doctorate, right? And that kind of sounded pretty cool to me. And also just the projects that I was able to do along the way. But, looking back now, the networking, not just within the different institutions that I was in, but also the different conferences that I was able to attend, it ended up opening doors that I had no idea that were going to be open. Again, like I said, MSL, that's the short for the role that I do, is really not well known within PhD trainees. You kind of hear about it if you're lucky enough, that you kind of know people that are doing it, or that you kind of come across a conference that has clinicians attending that particular conference. So you learn about other roles. And so, cultivating that network, it doesn't have to be just within what you're doing. It could be something that you are aiming for if you know what you're aiming for. So networking, even at the stage that you guys are in, is going to be super important, not just to find the very first job that you might land, but also if you want to move on to another company. There's nothing on stone that says that once you start in a particular company working with them, that you have to stay with them. You can get your training for about a year, maybe 2, maybe 3. If you're totally comfortable staying, that is totally acceptable. But nothing says that you need to stay there for the rest of your life. You know, if you want to add skills to what you have learned in school, that's one of the best way to do it. Once you land a job, get those skills and then grow the skills by moving somewhere else. And the way that you move to something else is by growing your network within the company that you're in, within the network that you have here at the college. There are a lot of alumni, including myself, that we love to come back and talk to students. And we love to connect you with people that we might know. So that is another opportunity for you to do something like that, which is essentially, I wish I would have done that, once I was a lot younger. But now I do it constantly. It doesn't really matter now that I have a job. It doesn't really matter. I'm still on LinkedIn, connecting with recruiters, connecting with other people who are doing the same job that I'm doing, but they just happen to be at a different company. And so I'm always keeping a pulse to what is going on. And I kind of decide where I want to go at this point, right? And that's essentially the freedom that you want to have. You are starting in a position of being a student, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be a student forever. So make sure that you're opening doors wherever you can open them.
Thank you. And Myra, it sounds like you would be a great Puente mentor if you're interested for recruiting.
I love mentoring.
Just for the rest of the
so.
panelists as well. Speaking of mentoring, a question for Drew. Did you have a mentor that helped you get to where you are?
So definitely yes to this question. I'd say at every point in my process here, I had 1 to 2 mentors that really made the difference. Like I think it was necessary to have them. And I think the lesson I kind of have from it is that like we're always on the shoulders of giants. So working side by side with somebody in the lab was the most valuable thing because you have somebody that had been through similar path as you and come up the other side and sort of learned all the tricks and seen the difficulties that can then be there to say like, oh, that's real. And this is how I dealt with it. And, I think that was valuable for like navigating the challenges, like the fears of entering like the workforce and career and having to make a publication or produce knowledge. I think that was very helpful. And, to include like the flip side, it's great to have good mentors, but you can also end up with bad mentors. And something I like to remember is that like, the good mentors give us the best example of what to do. And then the bad mentors give us the best example of what never to do. And so I think it's also valuable to notice if environment feels uncomfortable, or if like the guy that's head of it kind of seems narcissistic or mean, or if like people say they don't like being around there. I think it's valuable to sort of like message out to like other undergrads in the lab or postdocs or people that work there and have coffee and see what it's like and if they enjoy there. And then, you kind of have a plug into the space and you can feel better about your choice. So I thought mentorship was very important for me to end up at a happy place that I'm happy with. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Okay. Next question, Rajneesh. What kind of work would a student completing the biotechnology program at CCC be prepared to do?
So the basics are really important for us to establish, and there are courses that are offered here for you to kind of fill in the gaps. And I see students that know some things, and maybe there are some things that they haven't experienced yet. So very basic courses to start with to fill the gaps in, and then really learn the SLPs, safe laboratory practices. A lab can be a dangerous place. So it's important to learn all the safety rules, how to handle chemicals, and all these things are taught here. So take those basic courses if you haven't yet. And once you've done that, you can get on a path. There are courses, and you can connect with the bio department here, Dr. Kolikowski, who's here, can connect with her. And there are courses that will then slightly advance you further, like learning about how to isolate or extract proteins, running gels, how to not just extract things from living cells and tissues, but also analyze them, how to measure things, how to quantify things. All these things will be taught in these courses, and also DNA, working with DNA, sequencing. Once you get hands-on, it doesn't matter, I told you those 3 paths. It doesn't matter which path you're on, because you have to learn these basic things and have an understanding of how we do biotechnology. Once you learn these protocols and once you understand how and why they work, then it just opens up many opportunities for you, because then now you can start to think, hey, I want to go in this direction or this direction. So just establishing yourself with confidence. Don't be scared. It's just information. And it's just, they're just terms, terminologies, just big words that you come across. But outside of that, it's just logic. Biological systems work within our universal physical laws. So things are very logical. So once, if you're able to understand things and grasp things, the terminologies and difficult words will not matter as much. Right? So I think just establish yourself at the very fundamental level, learn the techniques, take those basic courses. We also have a paid internship program here, which we just started this year. It runs all throughout the year. It's called BEST, Biotechnology Education and Specialized Training. And you can go on to I-Cultiver. The website is listed on one of the handouts you got. And on that website, look for the BEST program. So once you have a little bit of training, like I would say basic courses done and a little bit of advanced training, this BEST program operates between multiple locations. So it'll be important for you to have some kinds of vehicle. But we do research at Stanford, at UC Berkeley, at USTA in Albany. And so the BEST program students will be working at all these locations, doing actual research, real-time research with industry and university. So the important thing is to just get your basics solid first.
Thank you, Rajneesh. All right, here. Andrea, what would the next steps for advancement once working, or what would be the next steps for advancement once working as a biological technician?
So it depends on kind of what path you've identified as interest, what interests you in the company. There are many different avenues within a company. It's like a small world in it of itself. Manufacturing is an entry-level position. You enter that position to get exposure to the overall picture, if you will. Once you've established yourself and you've made yourself known to the company, you've worked with upper management, you've worked with different process specialists, things of that nature, you develop different relationships depending upon your interests and your talents. So if you're interested in, more of the scientific assays and testing procedures and things of that nature, you might establish a relationship with MSAT or QC, and then maybe pursue like a Linditech position to get exposure to that department. And if you do well, then they will hire you into that department. If you're interested in the business aspects, you might be joining a team. For instance, I lead the manufacturing engagement and communication team. So I work with upper management a lot on employee retention initiatives and things like that. So if you'd rather go into the business side, you can pursue that avenue. If you are interested in more like the nitty-gritty, like science and process improvement, you enjoy revising SOPs and kind of continuously tweaking the process, making it better, then you might be hired as a process engineer or a bioprocess specialist. My particular path that I've spoken with my supervisor and leadership in the company is to go into management. So next steps for me would be to pursue a lead position in my department and then ultimately move up to supervisor and perhaps manager in the company. but it just depends on, where your interests lie and the relationships that you establish. So I would just say, when you go into the company, get as much exposure as you can, volunteer for everything. It doesn't matter what it is, because you just never know where the opportunities will take you. And, really the world is your oyster. You can pretty much work wherever you want to, if you're willing to put in the work and the time.
Thank you, Andrea. So let's jump over to Myra. So Myra, is there a way to fast track career progression?
Yeah, when I saw that question, I'm like, yeah, who can tell me that? So I guess it depends, right, what the ultimate goal is for you. I think biotech, especially in this part of the US, is so rich at the different topics that are being studied, the different companies that are around, different size of companies. So obviously getting the basics, I'm kind of gonna echo a little bit of what is already been said. Knowing your basics is a way to get into this particular career, right? Like I mentioned, I did my very first project just before I finished my high school, just down the street in Kennedy. And so I had a hands-on experience, but you need to understand what is the science behind each of those things that you're doing. So you can't just jump over understanding the basics, but once you get the basics and you start figuring out what pathway, whether you want to go more like biotech, whether you want to go more into pharmaceutical, there are different areas where you can focus. One of the things that I've heard from some of my colleagues is that, yes, is getting into a entry level. Obviously, that would be one of the easiest way to do it. Start volunteering and start doing other kind of jobs to add to your skills. I know that there are some companies, again, it kind of depends on the size of the company, that they would actually pay their employees to go back to school and get a whatever degree is above whatever they have. Responsibilities are based on the educational level. So if you want to progress within some companies, again, it kind of depends on how the culture is within the company. Some of them would actually pay to have you go back and get more skills, and then you can come back, develop yourself within the company. If you're done with that particular company, you can move on. So it really depends on what the ultimate goal is. Or what I ended up doing, there were definitely certain things I could have skipped. And one of those would have been, well, if I had known that this particular career path was available, I would have focused a lot sooner into it. So instead of going to do a postdoc, so I finished my PhD, doing a postdoc is you continue training afterwards. I wouldn't have to have done that. That was something that if you wanted to do it, it's always encouraged. If you want to go into becoming a professor, that is always a must. It's not a must for all the other positions available. So yeah, I could have skipped a whole few years and would have gone straight to finding up the job that I currently have. And so the networking component of it comes into play. So if you want to skip certain steps, one way to do it is to know where those opportunities are open by tapping into the network that you're in. That would be one kind of practical way of first understanding what possibilities are available. And second, well, can I actually get into that particular position based on your own, training, your own basic understandings and whatever skill set you had at that particular stage of your career. Bottom line for me, it is that networking component. You just never know who's going to be looking at you, supporting you, even mentoring you as you go along, and making sure that you're the best at whatever you're doing at that particular moment. Nobody's going to promote you just because they know you. May happen, may not happen. I don't know. It hasn't happened to me yet. But as long as you have your skills and they know that you have those skills and you have proven that you are good at that particular work that you're doing, you create your, a way of people looking at you, that they can count on you, that you are, you have deadlines, you meet those deadlines. Education is obviously another way for you to advance depending on where it is that you want to end up.
So be excellent and know people. Got it.
Yes.
All right. So in the interest of time, we're going to combine the panelists' closing remarks along with this last question that everyone's going to ask. So we'll start with Drew and we'll just make our way down. All right. So start with Drew. Please tell us about one tip or trick that really helped you get started on the right foot. Or if you struggled initially, how did you turn it around? And then any closing remarks you may have.
Yeah, so I think the tip that I have, it was advice I received from my high school chemistry teacher. Aim for the stars, because if you fall on the moon. If you aim for this moon and you fall, you'll never leave this atmosphere. And like kind of like look back on like the steps and achievements I've had on my way. And like, I remember how I felt at the time, like, I feel silly and like, I can't do this. And like, I don't know, I still feel that way and it's like already past me, but like, it was just kind of sometimes just like going for it. And then things kind of like work out. But just even if it is a failure, there's so much learned through a failure that it's almost more valuable than a success. And also like side one, I kind of started learning to code a little bit early on. It helped a lot with randomly throughout my career.
And any closing remarks? Anything you want to add on that, Drew?
No, I think it's really great and kick-ass what we're doing here to bring people from community college and different backgrounds into science and into industries so that we can actually move our systems towards directions that we can feel good about, where water is clean, people are cared for, this earth isn't going through climate change. So that's like a lot of like the big motivation that I hope help keeps us going forward in biotech.
Thank you so much, Drew. And Andrea, same question. Please tell us about one tip or trick that really helped you get started on the right foot, or if you struggled initially, how did you turn it around?
For me, like Drew was saying, I had a lot of insecurities when I went back to school. I went back to school as an older adult, and I just, thought a lot about like, gosh, is it too late for me? Like, am I even going to be able to get a job? And I felt like that really held me back for a while, just obsessing about that particular aspect of my life. And then also wondering, like, I don't have any laboratory experience, I'm going to be, a 40-year-old woman coming straight out of school. How is this going to look on paper, And I kind of decided, what, rather than running away from my problems, I'm going to run towards them. So how am I going to solve this problem? I don't have any laboratory experience. How am I going to get that? So I went to my professors and I said, hey, I really want to work in the labs, and I had proved myself as a dedicated student, responsible student. They gave me the opportunity to work in the biotech and biology lab and work as like the student assistant laboratory manager. And so, okay, solved that problem. Next problem was, I don't know anybody in the industry. How am I going to do this? And we had a speaker come in from ISPE, the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering. And she was talking about how it was a fantastic network that would help you establish relationships with a whole myriad of people from industry that were dedicated to helping students progress and excel in their careers. So I started a chapter of ISPE at the college and became the chapter president. And at first, like, I had some issues, like getting people interested in that and like getting them to understand like what my vision was for that, to bring people from industry to the school, to get that exposure for not only our program, but for them to be seen as viable candidates for the position. But, once I kind of like flipped that message and like made it clear that like, hey, what I'm trying to do is get you guys jobs. And then people started coming to the meetings and then it kind of took off. And I was able to use that platform as the chapter president to, essentially like cold call people on LinkedIn, and then also hit up people from ISPE to help me arrange events at the school and get people to industry and make those connections, and then that's how like I was able to arrange my first internship. So eventually when I did get hired, those were all things that they looked at was like, wow, you have all of this laboratory experience. You have all of this leadership experience. You have all of this management experience. So those are all things that ended up working in my favor, but it wasn't because like I just got lucky. It was because I made it happen, and you can make it happen. You have the power to do that. So run towards your fears. Don't run away from them. And you also have a lot of people that are interested and dedicated to helping you. I help students all the time with like writing resumes, applying for internships. So you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'd be more than happy to help you out however I can.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much. You want to add any closing remarks or mic drop it right there? That was great. Okay, I think we'll move on to Myra. Okay, Myra, one tip or trick that really helped you get started on the right foot, or if you struggled initially, how did you turn it around?
Yeah, as Andrea, as you were speaking, there was a lot of colorites, we kind of experienced some of the same issues, but I think that I kind of want to call out this imposter syndrome that a lot of us experience all the time, right? And yeah, that feeling of, do I belong in this? Do I belong in this school? Do I belong in this career? Do I belong because of X, Y, and Z aspects of how I look or how I feel or anything like that? I think we all have those. Even after getting my PhD, I felt the same thing. I'm like, okay, I have a PhD. People can call me doctor. What does that even mean? And so I even felt a little bit of, okay, do I actually deserve this kind of thing? So in every single point where I think that whenever we're feeling a little bit of uncomfortable of being in a space, I call that myself as I am walking outside my comfort zone, which means that I will be uncomfortable. I will feel uncomfortable. And one of the things that ended up helping me quite a lot was just the passion of learning about science, learning about, the stars, learning about just about anything that has to do with the science component of life. That was kind of like my passion. So even if in the space that I walked in, I was the only one, only women in the room, it was like I was there because science brought me there. And that was the pull, that was the thread that was keeping me focused on something that I decided at one point in my life that that's what I was going to follow. And so whenever I feel uncomfortable in a situation, I always say, this is a place where I can grow as a person, as a scientist, as a medical representative now. And so whenever that uncomfort, whenever that feeling kind of comes around, I'm like, well, I'm in the right spot because I am uncomfortable. This is a growth moment and I'm going to grab it and just run with it. So that's kind of like my advice as a mic drop. I'm not going to drop the mic here. It's too small anyway. But essentially finding that passion is going to start pulling you wherever you need to go. Sometimes you don't even know where you want to go. And if you feel uncomfortable doing it, it's okay. It's fine. We all feel it. We all feel it all the time. I'm feeling it right now. But anyway, so yeah, so it's always going back to whoever it is that is supporting you, even if they don't know any science whatsoever. So my parents were the people that I know that they were my rock, and I knew that I can count on them. So this is even beyond just finding a career path. This is really feeling comfortable as a person and moving into a career that you feel comfortable doing.
Thank you, Myra. So listen, folks, we've had some amazing panelists. We're gonna have to skip the Q&A, okay? I know some of you may have some questions, but an email will be sent out. You could email, I think, Mariah. Yeah, Mariah Bruce, if you have any questions, and we'll reach out to the panelists. So lastly, we're just gonna have Rajneesh share one tip or trick on if you struggled initially and how you turned it around, and any closing remarks you may have.
Okay, my tip is don't be competitive. It's not what you're taught, but it's the wrong way to look at any profession. When you're becoming competitive, think about what happens. You're competing. You have to win, someone else has to lose. That's not the right way to think. If you apply for a job, if you get the job, you come home and say, I beat that person, I got the job. No. The way to approach how you think about it is to be collaborative and to make yourself so confident and secure and approach each problem with that confidence that I can do this. And other people will see this. So if you go to apply for a job and you prepare yourself the best way you can and show your passion, your interest in the position that you're applying for, and don't think about it as competition. And again, if you get the job, when you're working with other people, you're not competing with them to get ahead, to get above the ladder slowly. You will find many people who are not doing that. Majority of the people are taught right from school to be competitive. Be competitive. That's the only way you will succeed. That is not the right approach, especially in biotechnology, because it's a collaborative effort. And the more supportive and collaborative you are, Maria was saying network is very important. But the only way you can build a network is by being not competitive. Okay, so that's one tip. The last remark that I want to leave with, and I want you to remember whether or not you go into biotechnology. Biotechnology, like I said, is a privilege. And when you approach biotechnology, especially if you get into it, but even if you're not, you still remember these three things. 3 tips I'll give you. Intention. Why are you doing it in biotechnology? What is your intention? Is it to build a big company like Therinos? I don't know if you've heard of that, but if you're not, look up Elizabeth Home. But what is your intention? Why are you building a company? Or building a company or working in a company or whatever project you're doing, what is the intention? Second, what is the process? How is your intention being fulfilled? Is that process safe, environmentally safe? What things does it use? Are there other ways to do it? What are the methods that are being applied? So intention, process, and lastly, and most importantly, impact. What is the impact of your biotechnological project going to be? Not, is it just for some individuals? Is it for the company to sell and get lots of revenue? Or what is the impact? Is it going to have cure some disease? For example, the RNA vaccines, right? The impact of that was huge. So many people benefited from it. So impact not only applies to humans, but also animals, the environment, and the planet. So remember 3 things: intention, process, and impact. These are if we follow these things properly, we will have great biotechnological products, and you will have fun going through the process.
Thank you, Rajneesh. All right, folks, we're a bit over time, but I just want to give, let's give one more round of applause for our amazing panelists. Thank you so much. All right. And shouts out to the workforce development crew. You know who you are. What's good? Just give them a round of applause. I just want to thank you all students for showing up and participating in this conversation. Sorry about not having the Q&A part, but if you have any questions, about the biotech program, please visit cccbiotechnology.com to gain even more insight on the robust field. Connect with Dr. Contra about the CCC Best Program Partnership, or talk with your academic counselor, your boy, about adding one of the classes listed to your spring 2023 schedule. I'm going to hand it over to Megan. She's going to talk to you more about career preparation resources, and we'll get you out of here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Ennis Ortega. I'm one of the coordinators with Career Services. So we heard a lot of great information today, and you might be thinking, what's the next step? So next steps would be, checking in with your career services and getting your things like your resume up to date. And speaking of that, we actually have a resume lab happening tomorrow in our center from 12 to 1. So if you're looking to get fresh eyes on your resume, some quick tips and tricks, and someone just to look it over to really jumpstart you into maybe finding an internship or landing a job, that's a great place to start. We have lots of other resources throughout the semester that are going to be coming up. So we have a whole list. We have lots of things coming up. Like I said, resume lab, coffee with career in November, different internship workshops and things like that. So definitely check out all of our resources if you haven't already. Our center is located above culinary on the second floor in SAB 227, and we hope to see you guys stop by.
Thank you guys again for your time and for hanging in there. So just wanted to remind you to check your email after this event. Within an hour or two, you'll have an email. There'll be a post-event survey in it where we really love getting your feedback so we can make these events even better. Those who are the first 20 will definitely get their first choice of the items that you see on the screen in regards to a thank you gift for completing your survey. Everyone who completes it will get some sort of gift though, maybe just not their first choice if you're 40 down the line. So there's a t-shirt, there's an insulated mug, and there is a EOPS messenger bag. So wanted to make sure you know where you can connect. This is where the thank you gifts will be, and also where you will go for these wonderful workshops and events that Megan brought up. And then I just want to thank Jared and the panelists again for taking time to share all of your invaluable insights. Thank you so much to the audience for participating, and I look forward to seeing you at the next Workforce Wednesday event that we'll have on October 19th. And that will be focused on health and human services. So thank you so much again for all your time.
It's fun. Good to meet you. I'm Katie Polakowski. I do the biotech program. Oh, that's so cool to hear like the non-nothing